January 14, 2021. It is now 8:51 p.m. Our meeting this evening is virtual. As permitted by Governor Pritzker's executive orders of earlier this year, we are convening a remote special board meeting tonight, which immediately follows the committee of the whole. This is being broadcast via Zoom and on our YouTube channel. The state continues to operate under disaster declaration related to the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic. The health department continues to advise the community to practice social distancing, wear face masks, and avoid unnecessary contact with others. Based on the current public health concerns, I, Sarah Spivey, as head of the public body, do believe it is neither practical nor prudent to hold an in-person meeting of the Board of Education tonight. I further believe that it is neither practical nor prudent for the public to be present at the public body's regular meeting location. And we are continuing to hold remote meetings with updated practices to comply with Public Act 101-640, signed by Governor Pritzker on June 12, 2020. Gail, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Kofsky?
Here.
Dr. Moore?
Here.
Mr. Barron?
Here.
Mr. Isley?
Here.
Mr. Martieri?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
And Ms. Dixon-Spivey?
Here. I want to note one thing before we start with a closed session motion. I believe we have additional public comments this evening. Those public comments are pertaining to items that are for this meeting, which is why we're not before the committee of the whole meeting. I got an email on this earlier this evening,
Yes,
like
thank
an
you.
hour ago, so that's why I'm saying this. So those additional public comments will be read. However, they are read after closed session. We anticipate closed session will take 45 minutes or an hour is probably my best guess. So I just want to know that for people who might be interested in those public comments and want to come back to see them. We will be on the same Zoom link for open session. So we will begin closed session in a moment here. We go to a separate Zoom link. So if you want to, those at home want to get a bite to eat, come back in 45 minutes or an hour or so. Hopefully we will be coming back around that time to this Zoom link that we're currently on. All right, so I move to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district and independent contractors and specific volunteers, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity, and collective negotiating matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Gail, can we please have a roll call vote?
And that was Dr. Moore or Ms. Harris?
That was Ms. Harris.
Thank you for the roll call. Dr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Mr. Isley?
Yes.
Mr. Martieri?
Yes.
Ms. Harris?
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky?
Yes.
And Ms. Dixon-Spivey?
Yes.
Thank
So
you.
board members, there should be an email for closed session, of course, with the link for you guys. Why don't we reconvene in closed session? It's now 8:55. Why don't we meet each other there at 9?
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here it is.
Do we have Joylyn? Or Gail? No, as soon as we have them, we'll start. Okay, as soon as we have Gail, I think we can get rolling.
Yeah, Gail was notifying Ryan that we were ready.
Hi, Gail.
Hello,
Are you ready?
I am. Yes, I
Alright.
am. 1 second.
Sure.
Just get to that. Okay.
So our next part of our meeting, now that we're back from closed session, is public comments. Gail, I do believe we have some.
Yes, we do. So the first one is from Jerry Humbert. Dear President Dixon, Spivey, and District 200 Board of Education members, thank you for your endless time and significant talents volunteering on the District 200 Board of Education, especially during these turbulent times. I would look wistfully at the school as I realize we are quickly approaching the 1-year mark for students in remote learning. It is both fortunate, unfortunate, and distressing. I hope for the sake of the students that we will soon return to school in a hybrid plan. Now you have the unenviable task of starting the search for a new superintendent. I applaud you for getting the search underway, but I am concerned about some of the language I have heard on the special board meeting on Wednesday. As I understand it, you are determined to find and sign a contract with a new superintendent before the new board is seated following the April election. During your discussion, Craig Isley wondered what compromises would need to be made to find the right candidate in the condensed time frame. Furthermore, Sarah Dixon Spivey commented that it would be dangerous to leave the decision to the newly elected board. These comments heightened my senses. Why would OPRF need to compromise in any way when searching for a new superintendent? As I have heard many times, we are a destination district and therefore highly sought out when openings arise. I would imagine that no compromise would be necessary unless the condensed time frame forces the current board into a rushed decision. A rushed decision would not be student focused nor student forward. I would implore you to not make a decision if that is the position you find yourselves in. It's alarming to hear Sarah Dixon Spivey say that it would be dangerous to leave the superintendent decision to the newly elected board. The board has only one employee, the superintendent. If the newly elected board is not qualified to choose their one and only employee, that is what is alarming. How can we expect the board to faithfully guide their employees if they have no ownership in the success of the new superintendent? Will the newly elected board feel accountability for this new superintendent? Or will we, the Oak Park community, Oak Park River Forest community, be hearing excuses from the new board that we didn't hire the superintendent? If it doesn't work out as planned, I would certainly hope that this board would have belief that the Oak Park and River Forest residents could choose board representatives that would be capable and ingrained in hiring the best possible superintendent for the great school of Oak Park River Forest. To me, it seems only ethical and appropriate that the next board would be part of the process, given the reporting structure of the superintendent to the board. By not allowing the next board to hire the new superintendent, you take a very important responsibility away from the new board while simultaneously just diminishing the vote of each Oak Park and River Forest resident that takes the time to go to the polls to elect our new board. This
So
should
that's 3 minutes. I don't know if it's close to wrapping up.
This should be an important election issue all around, as it will impact us for the foreseeable future. The next one is from Rob Koch, who lives in River Forest. I would like for my comment, to be in the board meeting this evening. Although our current board believes they are the best suited to choose the next school district 200 superintendent, much has changed in the last few years. The world we live in today is significantly different from when our last board was elected. More people have become engaged in our community where they have actively expressed their belief and opinions. Students, teachers, and community members of Oak Park River Forest have organized and voiced their positions through local demonstrations, social media, and school walkouts. Opposition to these views have been also publicly acknowledged. These perspectives need to be represented in selecting then the next school district 200 superintendent, and allowing a newly elected board to choose will allow this to happen. From Andy Holt. Dear board, with regard to the upcoming selection of a new superintendent, I ask that you consider the following comments. With the increasing number of changes to student curriculum and the continuing impact on in-classroom learning brought about by the pandemic, it is more important than ever to engage the community in important decisions that will have a long-term impact on the education of our children. The selection of the new superintendent is one of the most important decisions a board can make, and the election of the school board is the best way to engage the community in making the decision. To suggest that leaving such an important decision to the next freely elected board would be dangerous is quite frankly an insult to the community that you were freely elected to serve. I would expect that an incoming superintendent would want to know that they have the support of the community that they will be serving. I ask that you please take this opportunity to engage the public by letting the newly elected board select the next superintendent. Thank you for your consideration. From Seth Travis. I am writing to express concern regarding the timing of the search for our new OPRF high school superintendent. I understand the board intends to hire a new superintendent before the forthcoming election and before any new board members are seated. In the forthcoming election, the community will have an opportunity to vote for a majority of the board seats. As a community, we will express our collective view about the strategic direction and priorities of the school, the tactics selected to achieve those goals, and the success of the board and the administration in implementing those goals. It is important for that vote and the voice of the community to be heard when selecting the new superintendent. I would encourage this board to hear the community feedback through the election process and give the new board the opportunity it should have to select the next leader of our high school. Thank you. This is from Laura Husby, parent of Oak Park River Forest class of 2023, 2025, 2028. There is a community election being held in early April where a majority of OPRF high school board seats could turn over. Artificially rushing the hiring process to meet a self-imposed deadline is not the right move for this community. As a board, you find yourselves at a time in history when we need to involve our communities and let the election process play out more than ever. The board recently reaffirmed its commitment to building bridges with our community when the administration unnecessarily agitated our community over student programming cuts in December. Yet, just a few days ago at the January 11th board meeting, this board suggested that leaving the hiring decision to the next freely elected board would be dangerous, and that nobody knows the district as well as the sitting board members do or knows the needs of the district. Teachers, students, parents, OPRF families, and community members know just as much, in some ways more, and deserve to be part of the superintendent selection process. We've been told that the community involvement is desired, while at the same time you have a set of self-imposed rushed hiring date to ensure you make this decision. Please wait to be better informed by the community you represent before picking our new leader. This leader will be the head of this large school community for years to come, and community input is critical. From Audrey Keith, there is a community election being held in early April where a majority of OPRF HS board seats could turn over. Artificially rushing the hiring process to meet a self-imposed deadline does not make any sense. As a board, you will find yourselves at a unique time in history, a time where we need to involve our communities and let the election process play out more than ever. This board recently reaffirmed its commitment to building bridges with our community when the administration unnecessarily agitated our community over student programming cuts in December. Yet, just a few days ago, at the January 11th board meeting, this board suggested that leaving the hiring decision to the next freely elected board would be dangerous, and that nobody knows the district as well as the sitting board members do or knows the needs of the district. I would like to offer a different approach. Perhaps the new board might have new, additional, fresh ideas for OPRF that should certainly be considered when hiring a superintendent. While I mean no disrespect to the current administration, the high school has been taking a different direction for a few years now, and as a result, the school rankings have decreased from a 9 to a 7. I think it is time to listen to the community, teachers, and potentially new board members who may offer different insight and a different approach. Get the community involved. Get the new board involved. The new board will be the group who will be working with the new superintendent. It makes complete sense that the new board would have some input in the hiring process. I ask that you do not impose this artificial deadline and consider the community's input and the new board's input. There is time. From Clay Hewlin. While many kids are struggling emotionally and educationally and socially due to online learning, I find it appalling that the most important task at hand for the board is to fast track a new superintendent. I wish our board showed as much urgency and passion for our kids' health, education, and emotional stability than they do for the agendas and administrative hires. When the community elections being held, being held in early April, where a majority of OPRF HS board seats could turn over, artificially rushing the hiring process to meet a self-imposed deadline can have the appearance of a power grab by this board. Yet just a few days ago at the January 11th board meeting, this board suggested that leaving the hiring decision to the next freely elected board would be dangerous, and that nobody knows the district as well as the sitting board members do or knows the needs of the district. Now, more than ever, we need to involve our communities and let the election process play out even more. This board recently reaffirmed its commitment to building bridges with our community when the administration unnecessarily agitated our community over student programming cuts in December. I believe teachers, students, parents, OPRF families, and community members know just as much, in some ways more, about what is good for the district, and I see no danger in the board waiting to be better informed by the community you represent before picking our leaders. Thank you. From Amanda Massey, my proposal is that we elect the board before hiring a superintendent, thus giving the board an opportunity to receive community feedback prior to making the decision on the candidate. This satisfies allowing for a collaborative effort among all stakeholders. Thank you. From Elizabeth Henderson, for the good of our community, please wait until our community has had the opportunity to evaluate and vote for the new board members before selecting a new superintendent. Hearing from the newly elected board members will be important. However, a much more important reason to wait is so you can listen to the concerns of the community dialogue this election season. Please do not rush this decision by setting self-imposed dates, as our next leader would help set the tone of our high school for years to come. A concerned citizen. The next one is from Patty Flannery. Dear Board of Education, I'm trying to understand why the board is rushing to hire a new superintendent during a pandemic while we have failed our students and teachers' trust in the administration is at an all-time low. As it stands now, the Board of Education is pushing through the hiring of a superintendent without addressing the root cause of the problem in our community, a lack of trust between teachers in the classroom and the administration and parents with the administration/board. Half the board seats are up for election and the disconnect in the community continues to grow. For the record, I have found many teachers at OPRF High School to have the best interest of our students above their own needs, but they are ignored as well. In fact, in the 19/20 pre-pandemic University of Chicago 5 Essential Study, teachers reported they have very little confidence in the administration. Additionally, the administration is withholding data from the parent survey that was completed at the same time. The administration and the union have consistently manipulated the data, surveys, and hired consultants to increase the overall budget without any accountability for the quality of education our students are receiving or the financial burden they placed on residents. As OPRF and RF, as Oak Park and River Forest families have been saddled with up to 166% real estate tax and rental increases the past 20 years, OPRFHS has fallen from 4th to 43rd in state rankings. Meanwhile, our neighboring communities, York and Lyons Township, surpassed us in academic excellence at 25% to 30% less cost per student and fewer administrators. We need a board that puts students first. Unlike the powerful unions that have driven up salaries without accountability, our students rely on parents and the board to take a stand for them. Anxiety, depression, and isolation are impacting students of all colors, shapes, and sizes. The 5 Essential expose the root cause of the problem within our school district at this time. Within our school district, period. At this time, the Board of Education should be cleaning up the issues that evolved during your time on the board, not appointing a new leader without addressing these issues. In closing, I understand everyone on the Board of Education has the best intentions and appreciate your efforts. The board is here to serve the community and we need your focus on building trust in the community and allowing the next board to select the superintendent that will unite our teachers, students, and the community. The next one is from Ross Lazzuzo, Dear Board of Education. As you know all too well, there's a community election being held in early April, where 4 out of 7, a majority of the OPRFHS board seats could turn over. Artificially rushing the hiring process to meet a self-imposed deadline prior to this election has the appearance of a power-hungry board who simply does not have time to listen to the community and evaluate the issues raised during the election season. As a board, you will find yourselves at a unique time in history when the world is dealing with a global pandemic and our OPRFHS students have not seen the inside of a classroom since March, coming up on a full calendar year and spanning 2 different school years, a time more than ever where we need to involve our communities and build trust. The board recently reaffirmed its commitment to building bridges and trust with our community when the administration unnecessarily agitated our community over student programming cuts in December. And yet, just a few days ago at the January 11th board meeting, this board suggested that leaving the hiring decision to the next freely elected board would, quote, be dangerous, end quote. It was also suggested that nobody knew the district as well as the sitting board, and that this board knew more about the needs of the district than anyone else. With all due respect, I believe teachers, students, parents, and OPRF families and community members know just as much. I hope you can at least see the hubris and hypocrisy of such statements. Please wait to be better informed by the community you represent before handpicking our new leader for the next 5 to 10 years. If someone could take this over and note that this is a combined statement, so that's 6 minutes maximum.
I can jump in.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. From David and Stephanie Schott, total of 6 minutes. I am a candidate for the OPRF District 200 School Board. I strongly disagree with the existing D200 School Board's commitment to hire a new superintendent for OPRF High School before the new school board begins its term in early May. The D200 School Board will make few single decisions over the next few years that are more critical for the entire school than the selection of a new superintendent. Oak Park and River Forest residents, through each of their elected representatives, should have their voices heard on this matter. The current board is wrong to decide on a new superintendent before D200 residents even get a chance to vote for new board members. It's not even a close call. The recent presidential election presented a similar issue, where the Senate at the end of its term rushed Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. The current D200 board is wrong to rush the choice of a superintendent for the same reasons that the Senate was wrong. Moreover, the board's planned decision includes a distressing feature the Senate decision did not. The judiciary is independent of Congress and the executive branch as a matter of law, and no Supreme Court justice reports to the President of the President or the Senate. That is not the case with the OPRF superintendent and the D200 school board. The OPRF superintendent will continue to owe duties and obligations to the school board long the existing board has finished its work. The superintendent will need to report to the new board. She or he will need to receive and understand board positions and policies. She or he will need to implement board directives. Performing these tasks well is essential to doing the job well, and our Oak Park and River Forest community deserves more than just good enough. OPRF deserves an exceptional superintendent. No board can reasonably expect to choose an exceptional executive that will not work a day for that board, but will work for years with a new board comprised of different board members. The existing District 200 school board is not an exception to this principle. Current D200 board members might argue that they should just choose the new superintendent because a majority of the current board will continue to serve on the new board. As a matter of math, this is true. As a matter of principle, it is not. Each member of the D200 board, including each new board member, serves Oak Park and River Forest at large as one community. Each board member has an equal vote with the others. New board members may contribute thoughts and ideas that influence how existing board members currently see issues. This is true even with respect to matters the existing board considers to be a priority. For example, I would offer that Isabel Wilkerson's recent book, Cast: The Origins of Our Discontents, has made significant contributions in just the last few months to our understanding of social justice in America, of which some on the existing board may be influenced. Further, our understanding of justice is framed by what rights we have as individuals, and often more clearly by injustices we have seen or experienced. It is reasonable for Oak Park and River Forest to expect that new board members will have insights and experiences that existing board members will find helpful. It is one of the basic reasons we have elections. New D200 board members may also persuade existing board members to consider additional issues in the hiring of a superintendent that the prior board has not. At the very least, new board members should have this opportunity. My own campaign is in large part in service of an idea, which among other things, I think the board should consider in hiring the new superintendent. The idea is this: OPRF should have mindful use of critically study, develop policy for, and implement best practices around new media as an essential part of each student's education. I believe District 200 can add substantial value to the school and can do this at little cost by providing our students with a new manner of thinking about and engaging with this new media, which is at the center of their lives, typically now with little or no awareness. I raise this issue of new media because it reveals a central problem with the current school board's rush to choose a superintendent. I will also advocate for a requirement that the superintendent live within 10 miles of the school. For those candidates that do not live in or near our community, this should give them more than enough options for where to live. while also being close enough to come to the school in the event her or his presence is needed. School board members are not interchangeable. It is reasonable to expect that each school board member and each candidate for the board will offer something the others do not. Our community is right to value open-mindedness and learning. The existing board's plan to choose a new superintendent before the new board starts infers that the existing board is not open to input from new board members. And by extension, the voters of Oak Park and River Forest. I believe we all lose if the existing board remains on this path. I urge the existing board to reconsider its commitment to hiring a new superintendent before it binds the next board in a way we all regret. I ask too that those who agree with me let the existing board members know that the current board should not hire a new superintendent. There will be more than enough time for the new board to do this in the time that is necessary. Please make your voice count before it is too late. And the last comment is from Fred Arkin. It is the duty of this current duly elected board to hire the new superintendent, the next superintendent of D200. To put the decision off to the next board would be an abrogation of your responsibility. This being said, I also believe the board has the ability to include the community in the process through the use of surveys, focus groups, town halls, and including members of the community on selection and interview committees. Should the district wait for the new board to be seated to decide the superintendent would not be in place until spring 2022. The recruiting and hiring season is now. The time is such that the most preferred candidates will be in the pool now. Waiting for a newly seated board will not result in finding the best or even any appropriate candidates to fill the seat July 1st. Finally, having been through the process, having the issue politicized as a campaign issue in the upcoming election will not be beneficial in the selection of the proper candidate. This is a personnel matter. Much of the process has to be done outside of the public eye to comply with privacy laws. The better way is to find ways to include the community in the selection process. And that concludes the comments.
Thank you. All right, we have some action items this evening. The first we have is the saliva screening contract with Safeguard, and I see we have our attorney, Mr. Crowley. Welcome.
Would someone pull the presentation up on the screen? Thank you. Hold on, now I got to get to it. There we go.
I'm sorry, and Joy Lynn, while we're doing that, do we want to have, since Brian's here, do we want to have him talk about A and then maybe E? Do we want to move that up on the agenda?
I'm not sure what you mean, A and, oh, Brian is not talking about that. That's what we heard in closed session.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if Aries is still here. Mr. Dorr is.
No, I'm sorry, Joy Lynn. So the saliva screening and the superintendent search firm contract, I believe Brian did work on both of those.
Yes. Okay, so do
That's
you?
what I meant.
Okay, now I got it. Next slide, please. So at the December board meeting, we presented to the board that we were looking at two institutions, two companies that do saliva screening. One was Safeguard, which is out of the Loyola University. The other was Shield, which was out of the U of I, University of Illinois, Chicago, I'm sorry. And so after thorough examination and investigation, as a district, we are recommending that we move forward with Safeguard. But first of all, I'll ask the question, why saliva screening? For us, it's the health and safety of our students and our staff has always been our utmost priority. And we see that adding to a multi-layer approach for mitigating the spread of COVID, not only within our school, but in our school community. Next slide, please. So why test? We have various levels of mitigation that we currently have in place. The utilization of our cloth masks, the social distancing, and the cleaning and disinfecting that we do, and then hand washing. For us, the screening would be an additional level of that, like another level of PPE, where we would mitigate, as I said, the reduction of COVID being transmitted in our building as well as in our community, thus allowing us, we believe, as a different level of mitigation, being able to get our students on site in a more expedient manner. Next slide, please. And so as we recommend the safeguard surveillance, I want to start out by saying this is not a diagnostic test. Safeguard uses an RT lamp assay, which is a lower cost and easier to administer than a PCR diagnostic test. It detects the virus in asymptomatic people, as well as it refers the following for a diagnostic PCR test in order to confirm that. Also, I'm looking at two sets of notes, I'm sorry. I want to once again reiterate that the surveillance assay is not and is not to be considered or deemed a comprehensive diagnostic COVID-19 test and is intended to serve solely, as I said earlier, as an additional resource in surveillance for asymptomatic people. The results should not be the only sole basis of use. Based on a variety of factors I want to go through would indicate why we are going with Safeguard. Next slide, please. So for us right now, Safeguard is available. We can start almost as soon as we can get things up and running. Again, it is a surveillance, but will require a follow-up. Cost was also a factor for us. The cost per test are $11. The number of tests we anticipate doing within the scope of a week is 2,200 over a course of 17 weeks. We estimate that cost to not exceed $411,400. We may increase our number of the 2,200 by including once the Illinois High School Athletic Association says that sports may resume. It is our intent to also include our students who are in athletic and extracurriculars. It is easy to administer. It can be taken at home. We anticipate putting 7 drop boxes throughout our community so that our students and our families have easy access. We're looking at putting drop boxes in the 4 southeast and southwest of our community, the 4 northeast, northwest, 2 located in River Forest, as well as the YMCA and our own location here. The typical turnaround time for getting the results is 4 to 8 hours, but no more than 24 hours. And it's guaranteed that the test today results will be received the next day. When you think about the false positivity rate of this screener, it is less than 1%. And it does not require us to share any of our student or faculty members' personal information. Next slide, please. I also want to go through very quickly. These are the components of the test, and then I want to highlight some other things. The testing kit consists of a straw, which is to help collect the saliva, the vial, or we call them pipettes, for collecting the saliva, an envelope, and then a transport tray. It is our understanding through our agreement with Safeguard that the district is responsible for the collection, providing the information to our families and our staff, the collection of the samples, and then transporting those collection materials to the lab. The district is responsible for generating the barcodes for each test. As I said earlier, there will be no identifying information for staff or students that will be shared with the vendor. The confirmation accuracy rate on this screener is 99%. Safeguard will provide, as I said earlier, the screening information to the district within 4 to 8 hours. Our contract is, several schools have taken this contract. It is our goal to test our staff weekly and our students weekly. We are requesting that this test be mandatory for our students who have opted in for hybrid learning. However, for staff, it is a choice of whether or not they participate in the screening. Next slide, please. So our next steps are to, once the board approves, it is our intent, and we've already started this process, to really look at using our surveillance screener as another indicator in our metrics for being able to bring students back in school as another layer. And so we will start to the review and the revision process of our metrics. We started that this week. It is our hope to have that solidified so that we can communicate that information next week. Once the board approves, we can start a pilot. We have identified 5 to 10 administrators who will participate in this pilot. And the pilot is designed to allow us to make sure that the barcodes can be read and that the process runs smoothly. We're also working on other logistics, such as where to put the lock boxes, how and when to print the labels, getting the packets prepared for our students and our staff, and then a mass communication that really identifies how, with an FAQ, to take the screener, the drop locations, the timing for locations, and exactly word specifics of how this process will run. Once that is all in place, we'll be ready to launch. Based upon our communication with Safeguard, should the board approve tonight, we should have everything up and running, as soon as January the 25th to start the screening process. It is also our hope to screen our students and our staff no more than 48 hours prior to them coming on site. So when the students are in their cohort, if you're in the O cohort on Monday, it is our goal to have the screening done prior to that. Next slide. And we were asked by one of our board members prior to getting the screener, prior to reviewing and revising our metrics with different layers of looking at. And I do want to say, we are not changing our metrics because of the screener. The screener will allow us to revisit our metrics as another level of PPE and possibly getting our students and our staff in a more safely manner, as I indicated earlier, reducing the amount of spread both internally in our building and in the community. But as of today, our current metrics prior to any revision, there are 5 things that we look at. We look at on-site cases, confirmed cases of COVID. We look at the zip codes for Oak Park and River Forest. There are 4 zip codes. And we look at the cases per 100,000 and the positivity rate. We also take into consideration the Cook County metrics of cases per 100,000 and the positivity rate. As of today, we have 1 positive case of COVID. We have in Oak Park and River Forest 285 cases per 100,000, and the positivity rate for Oak Park and River Forest combined through the Northwestern site is 7.6%. For Cook County, there are 354 cases per 100,000, and the positivity rate is 10.2. And so based upon our current metrics, we would be remote, which is how we are right now. We are also committed to give our families and our staff a week's notice as to when we will be coming on site. Brian is here to answer any questions about the contract. Myself and members of the team are prepared to answer any questions regarding the process.
So then I have a couple like quick and easy questions. Number one, the idea around no personally identifiable information going to the vendor. That's going to be, we're using barcodes so that we then would match up the vial with the individual so that we can notify them of a potentially positive
So
test.
what will happen is you can only have 7 digits on the barcode. 2 are being assigned to us by Safeguard, and then we will come up with the others so that only we can identify those students. We also will have to, one of the logistical pieces is once we are notified, the process for contact tracing, so that we can reach out to those individuals and make sure that they know the results of their screener and that they will then need to go and get a real diagnostic test. The other thing is each envelope has a label on it as well, so that when we receive it, we will know who we have the sample from. One of the other things we're also trying to do internally to track those samples once they are taken is adding an indicator to our health self-certification app each morning, so that we have a way of knowing if we have the samples collected for the students and the staff prior to their entry into the building.
And I'll just do this like rapid fire to get through it. And so any student with a presumptively or staff with a presumptively positive test would then not be on site until they had either confirmation of a negative test or had quarantined for the specific, the specified amount of time.
And even when if they test positive and they quarantine, when they return, they have to have what's called a release of isolation.
Okay, yeah, and I should have said that, not a negative test, because those don't come back for quite some time typically. And then my last question is just to confirm, the reason that it's optional for faculty is due to employment law and the fact that we simply cannot mandate a health test for our employees of that nature.
That is correct.
Accurate.
It was part of our also our MOA.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have a follow-up then? So when we say staff being tested, is the faculty senate the only group that can opt out, or is that for all staff?
That was part of our MOA with all of our bargaining units, which is who we have to bargain with. And then we're asking all of our non-affiliates and administrators to also fulfill the survey. There's a survey that a consent form that they will have to fill out. Dr. Sanders, did you want to speak to that as well?
Yes, we have a consent form ready to go. And part of our MOA was that people who consent to saliva testing, if they get sick with COVID, they would get additional sick days.
Okay, so we're the way I'm just trying to understand what we're saying now in terms of the test that we're this contract is that this will be mandatory for students to be tested, but we aren't sure how many staff will be tested.
It is mandatory for the students who have opted into hybrid.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay, and it is optional for staff who have opted in to hybrid, and I won't say opted in, for staff that will be on site that don't have the accommodations. I want to send the wrong message. But yes, those staff members who signed the waiver of consent, as Dr. Sanders indicated, if they contract COVID, then we will supply them the sick days. If they contract COVID and they have not done the consent, then they have to use their own sick time.
Okay, but that doesn't have anything to do with what the contract is. It's not a set number of tests it's just an anticipation of how many tests we're going to need.
Yes, we based that on the percentage of students we knew we could have in every day. So initially, we indicated to the board we could have a quarter of our students in on any day. The calculation we have now is, it's been changed, was based up on the families that opted in for hybrid learning, and we factored in all of our staff. Now that may change because our staff, as I said, we may have some staff members who opt out. We do also realize that there may be some students whose families opted them in for hybrid, who based or due to a medical condition don't have the ability to drool or form spit, that we have to take.
Sorry.
I know that's the language they use. It kind of makes you cringe when you say it. May not be able to produce the saliva to go into the vial.
Okay, I struggle a little bit with, and this isn't for the vendor, but understanding how effective this screening process is going to be if it's not abided by everyone entering the building. I mean, how we're getting what we think we're going to get from this type of screening.
Well, as I said, this screener is additional level of mitigation for us. But as we talk to some of our surrounding districts who have implemented, as we had conversations with our legal counsel, and we really wanted to make this happen as a school district, it was best to allow the adults to either opt in or opt out.
If I could chime in that just really quickly too, the kind of threshold percentage that we were given was 75%. And so with the volume of students who are going to be in the building taking this, and the vast majority of the adults are going to be in the building doing the screener, we are very confident that we're going to be well, in excess of that 75% number. So in order for it to be effective with the population as a whole is coming in the building, I think we're all pretty confident, including the folks at Safeguard, that we're going to exceed that. That's with these exact same procedures. That's what they've seen on other campuses.
I would agree based upon a conversation we had today with some people. There were people who were readily volunteering for the pilot even.
Thank you.
Are there, I want to be conscious of Brian's time as well. Is there anyone who has contract questions that they may want to ask him, and then we are still here to answer any other questions that you may have?
I have questions. I don't know how they relate to the contract, but
You want to ask it and we'll see.
My first question is this, and this is regarding the specifics of the test administration, the administration. And I received information from my daughter's school where a different saliva test, they say there's conditions that exist by which you must do it, meaning that you can't brush your teeth, eat, chew gum, walk to school. So what are the requirements associated with this test being valid, and how do we plan on enforcing or making them happen?
I'm glad you asked that because I missed that and it was in my notes. I'm really glad you asked that. You're not supposed to chew gum, drink red juices, eat, or anything like that in less than 30 minutes prior to taking the saliva test. We talked to the Dr. Campbell about, well, if kids take it at home, how do you even know that they're doing it? If you get the test back and it comes back as a presumptive positive, you know that if it's not from that kid, because you talk about the accountability of it, you know that someone in that house is presumptively positive, which will stand to reason that others in the house could contract it as well. There has to be a level of trust with it. It is our hope, because that was one of the things we thought about. How do you even know? But based upon what they've said to us, as I said about it being in the home, is another way of reliability. I don't know if Carolyn, did Julie, I can't see everybody, did Julie Toretta sign in? I don't know if the two of you.
No, I did not see her in here.
Okay. Did anyone else who was in the meeting want to address that? Or did that help Tom?
Yeah, I guess it's more a question of just, I'm not focusing on people cheating on the test. I'm focusing on, not eating 30 minutes, putting in place the practices so that when you take the test, it's valid. It's going to take some heavy education because, you go out, you brush your teeth, and then you take the test. Oops, it's no longer a valid test. So
that is true.
If I could add, so what we're going to be supplying a month's worth of testing. We're going to be putting together kits that have everything students and staff need for a month's worth of testing. And in each of those kits is going to be instructions, very clear instructions. And we'll have those on our website and we'll promote them as much as possible. But, when it comes right down to it, we're not there watching them do it. We don't have that level of control, but we can certainly promote the proper testing procedures.
I'm also going to piggyback, thinking of my college daughter's experience, and what I originally thought when we talked about the testing was that it would be done on site. So being done at home, I'm just trying to see how we are going to be able to, I mean, we're talking about, honor system and trusting. I know that my daughters at their school, they are tested twice a week. It's a nasal swab, self-administered, but you do it right there in front of someone. So there is that level of, there's a compliance and also the ability to know if you have an appropriate sample or not. So I'm struggling to
Yeah.
It feels like this before it was happening on site. And
that
so
is true. As we looked at it, and then Greg, I'll let you. And then we talked about doing samples on site and off site. There were also some logistical pieces to that, as well as staffing pieces to that caused us to see how we could get kids in a timely manner, how we could be more effective based upon the time that it takes to do the screening, wipe it off, get it in the tube, and do those different things. And so in the consciousness of getting kids in the building and the adults in a timely manner, that was a factor. The other piece was in talking to our other districts and wanting to get this done and the results back before kids come into the building, making sure that they come in safe and in a healthy manner. We had to do this no more than 48 hours prior to them entering, so that you don't have a student who comes in who is contagious or has COVID and then react and send them home. It is a way of, prior to them coming, saying your results came back okay, it's good for you to come in on your O day, or it's good for you to come in on your P day. And the same with staff. That was another step for us in reducing the potential of contact with someone with COVID. Greg,
And
you want to add to that? I saw
well,
you.
just I think that's not I understand those parts of it. I really am, it's more about the validity of the test as opposed to the rationale for the test. And I am just, to the points about not eating and we're trusting and then false positives and wanting to do it off site to ward off against, to be a preventative measure or a measure to prevent someone that may be positive. It feels like it feels a little circular to me because of the way that it's being administered, where it doesn't feel as though we have the same level, that point, whatever validity in terms of this type of procedure. Is it the same, if you're doing home tests with adolescents as it is with, a supervised test?
What we've been told by Dr. Campbell is that the rate had, the school districts who are doing it, and so that as well, that the rate of success with this screener is approximately 99% success. And most of them have their students taking it at home. There are some cases where the students do their samples on site. Most of the districts that have elementary or middle schools, their kids do them on site. Most of the high schools, they drop them off. And it has not, they have seen great success in cases not being transmitted, I guess you could say it that way, on site. But we did have that conversation with Dr. Campbell about just the concerns we had about off-site. And it has not made a significant statistical difference.
Yeah, and to add to that just briefly, I think that it's a great question. And I think the trade-off is one of, if we had everybody, if we collected all of the samples in-house, that would help to ensure the validity of what we're collecting. Like, we'd be able to control that collection environment better, no doubt. we would not know throughout that entire day, right, whether any of the students in our building were positive or were carrying. We wouldn't be able to control that, so we would lose that. So you're balancing those two things together. If we do all the testing before they come into the school, you know, and you get your results back before they come into the school, you sacrifice a little bit of the control, no doubt, but you increase quite a bit the assurance that the folks who are coming in are not carrying. And so, I mean, it's balancing those two things together. And the recommendation from the folks at Safeguard and where we felt comfortable was erring on the latter side rather than the former part of that argument. And that's a success. And that's just not like a quick judgment based off of what they said or what we think. That is the predominant procedure that we've seen implemented, you know, for the folks who are using Safeguard, you know, around the western suburbs here. So, I mean, it's a balance. So,
if I could add, Greg, there's one additional piece too, aside from, you know, an increased risk of transmission if we allow kids to come in before we've checked their sample. If a kid tests positive, then we have a lot more contact tracing we have to do because they've been in the building, they've gone to 4 different classes, maybe they stayed for lunch, maybe they went to a social work group in the afternoon. And quite honestly, our health services department right now is doing a staggering amount of work. To add even more contact tracing on top of what they're already doing would be really challenging.
I think the other thing, Greg, with our schedule, with students, cohorts coming in 2 days in a row, if we test it, we might not get to that and we get it back late that night. We might not have the time to contact all of those, I won't say all of those, the families prior to those students reporting the next day. And so then we could potentially increase exposure by 2 days.
I appreciate all that. And my concerns are not around that part. It is truly about, you know, is this going to give us a real security or a false sense of security? And I'm wavering because I'm not clear. And I don't know if I'm sure there was information of, you know, how this tool was evaluated by independent folks outside of the company. So you know, I will just go with that. I am surprised to hear the switch to, you know, offsite. I understand the reasons in terms of expediency, and, you know, the cautions that may prevent that, you know, knowing ahead of time. But I just wonder how, in terms of compliance, if we will, other than the schools that are using it, their information, their data, if this is really going to give us what we need, particularly with the staff piece, the teacher piece or staff piece being optional.
I have a question related to that. So can you tell me again how many students are going to be in the building at a time?
Approximately 500, 525 on any given day.
And how many
Based on the
staff?
numbers who opted in.
And how many staff?
I can barely hear you.
I said, and how many staff?
If you take the staff from accommodations, Dr. Sanders, approximately how many total staff? And it's approximate.
Approximately 450.
So every 2 days, 950 people are going to get tested, saliva tested,
Yeah,
basically.
we plan to screen students based upon their cohorts. We would be screening every other day just because of the way the cohorts are set up for students, and once a week for staff. And we anticipate approximately 2,200 screens a week.
Okay, so the staff are also doing this at home?
They can do it at home and they can do it on site, but yes, they will have their kit. They may choose to come in and not do it until they get here, but they will all have their kits at home. We will pack the kits for a month.
And That's voluntary and in the MOU,
Yes.
OA? Okay,
with all
and
of our
then,
units.
so still roughly every other day, at least 500, right,
At
will
least.
be getting screened. So when they come in the morning, oh no, you will have already had their results. So they will have to drop their results off, they'll drop off their samples a day in advance, or logistically, what does that look like? Walk me through that process.
Okay, who wants to take this one? I can, or Greg, or
We are,
walking through the days.
so not talking staff, it's just imagine it's all in-house, right? So all the collection of that will predominantly be in-house. Throughout the community, as Dr. Pert Adams spoke previously, we're gonna have a variety of drop boxes in addition to having one in the building. And so if I am we have 4 cohorts, an O, P, and R, and an F cohort. If I'm a member of the O cohort, 48 hours, 2 days prior to me coming into the school, I will have a deadline, right? That I have to deliver my sample to one of these drop boxes or the school. That allows the next morning, right? Which now would be 24 hours before they're going to be in the school. That next morning, we're able to deliver all of those samples, collect and deliver all of those samples over to the Safeguard folks at Brookfield. They will be able to do the volume that we're going to be giving them, 500 plus every day, fairly quickly. So by sometime that afternoon, we understand we will get the results and be able to communicate to families, any individuals who, because of the screening, aren't able to come in. So 48 hours, 24 hours testing, and then the communication, the afternoon, early evening prior to their coming to the school the next day. Does that timeline, is that clear, or should I?
That's very helpful. So outside of that, so basically what you're saying is then you'll know how many cases are in the school, basically, or could potentially be coming in the school.
Well, they would be notified not to
Right.
come to the school.
They would be notified not to come into the school. And then
That's
is
right.
that
Including
information?
that data on the website, Gina, what we will be referring to them as presumptive positive cases. And they will be included on the COVID dashboard that we have posted once we implement screening. And then once their diagnosis is confirmed, then they would move into the confirmed positive category.
And then that information is then shared with the Department of Health in Oak Park?
So the Department of Health of Oak Park would get all of the positive cases for Oak Park. So that would be our students and our staff who live in Oak Park. If it's a staff person who lives in LaGrange, their Department of Public Health would have that information, because they have, before they can return, they have, okay, if you test presumptive positive, you have to go and have an official COVID-19 test. Once you've had that test, if you test positive, you cannot return on site until you have what's called a release of isolation letter. And that letter comes from that local Department of Public Health, or Cook County, if that's the Department of Health that you're under.
So wherever the staff member would live, that's where they would have to get that release letter from.
Right.
And then, so the testing, all the saliva testing, cost of that is falling completely on the school.
Yes, it's $11 per test. That includes
Yeah, I got that part. And then but all of the testing and follow-up after that is on the responsibility of the staff. Yes?
That is on us. The follow-up, the contact tracing, yes.
So the staff who, do the pre-saliva screening and comes back positive and they've been quarantined, and now in order to get that COVID test and that release, they're paying for that cost to come back in the building, yes?
Yes. They have to pay for the actual COVID test.
And so then we will then take these numbers to determine how quickly we're able to bring more students into the building.
It helps us, yes. that does.
So then in essence, we're using different metrics that we will be using different metrics than whatever the region or the state says at that point.
So what we're looking at, Greg, you want to say something?
I was just going to clarify that we will add this information, right, to the metrics that we have. So it's not a substitution.
Right. We say
Right? I wouldn't say it's different. It's
right. We're not getting rid of what we currently have. We're adding this as another layer of mitigation for us and data to look for. And as we review it, we will also look at the weightedness of what. So we believe that our internal data should carry a bit more weight than the county and maybe local spread. That's what we're looking at now. We started the conversation internally. We've had a conversation with our advisory. We had another conversation today, and we're having a follow-up conversation on Wednesday. And then our hope is to land on those metrics that we're looking at that will include the screener. It will also include some other things, and then that we will publicize it. But I will say what's on our website right now as our guide for stages is going to possibly change and be more exciting.
So basically you're adding other things to look at, but even if the state number and the Cook County number, like today's cases are what, 5,700 on January 13th. So say our building was only at, whatever comes back from the saliva testing is only at a lower number than that, then you're going to use basically the number of our building instead of what our county is looking at?
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that will be weighted more heavily for us to focus on, but we're not saying that we're going to do away with the other. We're not saying we're not going to take those things into consideration. These are conversation and assessment starters for us.
So I can add just really quickly too that we are looking at, we've broken down our metrics into basically kind of 3 priorities, right? We have our local cases, we have our Cook County, or I'm sorry, we have our River Forest and Oak Park numbers, and then we have our Cook County numbers. And so the saliva screening with these 3 numbers in place, we're still going to factor these other 2, the Oak Park, River Forest, and the Cook County. We're still always going to be looking at those numbers to give us incredibly important context for what we can do, right? What we should be doing as part of our guidance. Now, the local figures, previously what we had is just what was reported to us, right? Kids and faculty members who might have tested positive that we were aware of. Now we have a much more robust data set, right? Because of the saliva screening that allows us to say, well, this first metric is a lot more valuable. And so the conversations it's just a lot more robust. And so the conversations we've been having with our medical professionals is about that first metric and how much we should consider that first one in conjunction with the others. And so that's really where we are. And so it's really important to understand that this doesn't bump anything else out, that first one, right? Everything is all part of the conversation. And that was recommended not only from our medical professionals, but from the folks at Safeguard and from what we understand other districts are doing as well.
Can I ask?
I'm almost on time. I just want to say that my concern is that even though you're saying that, I still think that those numbers are going to supersede. And there's been a lot of pressure from the community for us to get students in buildings. And I feel with disregard, not that our administration has this. What I've seen is you all making a very concerted effort to ensure the safety of our students and our staff. But what I've heard repeatedly from our community is a demand to put students in buildings when people are still dying. And when there is still no guarantee of safety and no assurity that people are not gonna contract a disease that could have lifelong effects on them. So although I understand the reasoning behind this, I just need to be very clear that I do not support this idea of us. I don't support this. I just don't support the idea of us using metrics outside of the larger group because the travel, people being in and out, people coming in from different spaces. I understand we'll get a different number, but I know what you're saying. I feel it's going to supersede it. So I am highly concerned about returning people into buildings in the safest way. And for me personally, my belief is the safest way is we have a vaccine in progress. Can we have that vaccine be disseminated while our students don't have more disruption to already the trauma that they're living in? And then another additional upset to their, what they've gotten, they've gotten some form of consistency, even though it's not a perfect world. They've gotten a level of consistency, and now we're going to disrupt that again with the potential that it could be disrupted again if those numbers escalate, considering we have a super spreader new version out here as well. So I think that I just don't agree with us putting people back into the building yet. So I wanted to say that formally, and thank you for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gina. Matt, I think you were trying to unmute?
Yeah, so I see this as an effort to get the most relevant data possible for the universe of 1,000 people roughly in that building on a given day. And so I think it is the most relevant statistic for us to be able to put as much weight on as is advisable by the experts in the team of volunteers and staff that we have. And so I am very supportive of doing this. I feel like this is a way to create a subset of real pertinent data. And it's not just on a wing and a prayer that people are going to come in and maybe they have it. We know that's always possible, but this is to catch it before they come in. And so my biggest mathematical question, there's two, I guess. One is, and that this is going to be sorted out by other people, is how much weight to assign to this universe of 1,000 individuals on a given day moving forward, so that we don't have to have it be an interruption and a disruption. So we're investing money on the front end. And I know that not everyone's chosen to opt in, and anyone that's opted in can opt out. And so there's no coercion that's happening. This is, you know, it's a complicated thing. And so I come at it from a standpoint of the 99% figure that has been cited as being this, you know, accuracy level. I'm not sure where that number, you know, I don't know how independently verified that is. I'm not sure who's auditing that number. I don't know what other schools' experience has been to this point. But I really, so that's one thing I think we need to really understand. And we've said it, I've heard it's more than 99%, right? It's a less than 1%. Well, how much less? There should be precision. There's data, a data set. And we should also obviously be tracking. How prepared are we to track our results on this testing moving forward so that we know that it's 0.2% false positive, 0.8, or is it more? And so, those are just some things on my mind of understanding the validity of the 99% figure that we've been told. And so that's all I would say for this moment. But again, you know, we've got a math equation here in terms of how much weight to assign it. And as I said last month, you know, to me, the county and the local data are important to know, but that's not who's coming into our building. And so I appreciate the effort to really drill down on this as conscientiously and as carefully as possible. But we are not trailblazing on this. We can ride on the shoulders of other schools that have experienced this and have had successes and maybe some setbacks along the way. So I don't think the answer is to wait for a vaccine, because I'm wondering if my own two kids will be able to go to college in August or September, let alone. So if we're waiting for a vaccine, this school year is kaput, and that is not the answer.
Thank you, Matt. Ralph, I don't know that we've heard from you, and I think we haven't heard also from Tom. I'm not sure. I think we did hear from Craig, but I might be remembering wrong.
Sarah?
Yeah.
I had a question that I would appreciate clarifying. which is, when would this testing commence? Would it, I mean, would we have to, I mean, right now we're in, according to the current metrics, we are in a remote mode. So would we commence testing in a remote mode? Because if we didn't, then we're in this this whatever it is, where we don't get our students in to get that firsthand data. And we really are totally dependent on the Cook County and Oak Park or village data versus our own student population. So what's the plan?
I'm going to try to answer this for you. As I indicated earlier with regards to the metrics, as a team, we've already started looking at what will this look like once we have the screener. We know it'll be a while before we have substantive data from the screener to really put into the metrics. We had a meeting with the advisory group Tuesday about revisiting the metrics with some suggestions. We met this morning with members of the medical professionals to talk about what we heard Tuesday and how that impacts the metrics. And we had when I said the medical group, that consisted also of members of the faculty in that meeting Tuesday and community in the meeting today as well. We've scheduled a meeting for Wednesday with the medical professionals again to really try to tighten up the metrics that we have before we, say this is where we think we're going to be. With regards to screening and when that can happen, what we've been told by the vendor safeguard is once the board approves, we can immediately start the pilot, which means that those of us, the 5 to 10, who have said that they will participate in the pilot, could start as early as possibly next week. But they also told us that the soonest, based upon the board approving, that we could get the screening up and running as a system is the week of the 25th
Of January.
of January.
And would we, again, if we are still remote at that point by the metrics, I guess I'm just trying to understand the
It is our hope
So, yeah.
to have a revised metrics which include the screener as another level of another data point prior to that. Right now, we are operating under our current metrics.
Yeah.
But as we look at those things that we really think we need to consider, as we begin to look at the weightedness of our priorities and how they play out and what we think we can do to bring our staff and kids back in a safe manner, we want to get that out as soon as possible. It is our goal to have the revision to the metrics with all of the indicators that are critical. Now I'm going to say, when you see the metrics wherever we land, you're going to see those 3 priorities that Greg alluded to, but there are other factors that come into play that are not part of what's posted on any given day. But the things that we will take into the consideration of those 3 priorities, we hope to have that out in a comprehensive communication sometime next week, so
Yeah.
that our staff knows, so that our parents know, where we stand and what that looks like. The dashboard is up. When we communicated about the dashboard, we also indicated that would change once we, revisit our metrics and really decide what that looks like.
I just,
Also, just real quick, with regards to starting the screening, that would technically happen to a degree because we've talked about having the screening done 48 hours, no more than 48 hours before faculty and students come on site. So we would actually start the screener prior to anybody stepping in the building other than those of us who are already here. Greg, go ahead.
That last point is it. Well, we can start gathering this data and feed it into metrics prior to kids being in-house. So, thanks.
All right, Ralph? Any questions
Two
or
quick
comments?
ones, just two
Okay.
quick ones. So you need a 75% utilization rate for this screening process to be helpful. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be tracking that?
Yes, that's the reason
And-
for the barcode identifications for us. That's all.
Right. But so if you fall significantly below 75% utilization, if you fall to 68, if you fall to, is there a point at which you say, let's stop doing this and save the money because we're not getting any value from it?
We've not really had that discussion, but when I looked at the data on other school districts that are screening, you will have your peaks and your valleys on certain days. I guess what you're saying, if we see a trend, a consistent
Right.
trend, that would cause us to go back and have a conversation. There's a clause in the contract, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, is it a 30-day notice or a 60-day notice?
Yes, you are. So when you approve this, or if you approve this contract, you are committed to 60 days of this contract. After the 60 days, you are able to terminate with 7 days notice, with 15 days notice before that 60 days ends. But by approving the contract, you are committing yourself to 60 days.
Mm-hmm. I do want to also add that there's while we gave them an approximate number, the contract indicates that we can go down as low as 200. But if we need to go up, there's also a 20% variance that we could go up.
And then my next question is about the medical professionals. And so you've had medical professionals involved in the process.
Yeah.
Number one, are they fully on board with the selection of this type of test and the saliva testing is the way to go? And number two, are they on board with this 75% utilization rate as the magic demarcation point where it has value?
So I'm gonna try to answer that in two parts. Full transparency, our medical professionals are at two different ends of the spectrum as well. Our pediatricians believe we could bring our kids in and maybe not have the screener. Our infectious disease experts, our epidemiologists, and our infectious disease medical professionals believe that this is another level of mitigation for us that will help us reduce spread within our building and also within our community. We've reached out to, I know Karen has reached out to one of the members of the infectious disease expert that's on our medical group, as well as Julie Toretta, for just some additional insight. They all believe that this is another level that will help us make sure that we bring our students and our staff in a safe manner. The other question was the 75%. This is a question I have that's been in my mind tied to that I do think I need to defer to Brian on. It's the 75% of the people who opt to take it, or 75% of your total school population. Because it's not everybody won't be taking. The people who are remote have not opted in. I thought it was 75% of those that we anticipate screen on a regular basis.
I think it's 75% of the population in the building at any given time.
Yes,
right.
that's my understanding.
To
yeah.
reach a therapeutic level that assures minimal community spread. But I want to just chime in, and forgive me because I've sat in on all of these medical meetings too. Just because we're not at that 75% level, let's say we're at 60% or 50% or whatever of students opting in, it's not that there's no value, right? Like clearly it decreases the sense of security that we would have because community transmission becomes more likely, but that doesn't mean there's still no value, right? You're still catching students who could potentially be symptomatic and infecting others. And there is always going to be some value, even if it's just one person getting tested, it's just a diminishing returns.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why we want to be careful about saying, well, if we're not at 75% and we're at 74%, it's, you know, there's no value. I'm not sure that statement's accurate.
Thank
If
you.
I may add a couple of cents here, I made this mention last month. I may not have emphasized it adequately well. I think Tom said something similar. But what we are doing potentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, whoever is more expert or is an expert on this, is potentially saving lives, not in the building only, but in our community, by creating a good virus of safety, the viral effect of catching asymptomatic individuals, mostly teenagers, I would think, and so that they don't spread it unwittingly to others in the family and in the community. And so am I talking science fiction, or is that a potential that we're trying to address here? So that the $400,000 we're talking about, you know, is to me an investment in life.
Yeah, I mean, there is no significant surveillance screening program, obviously community-wide. And so if our institution is doing this for students and as many staff members as possible, I mean, I think that's a tremendous value to the community as a whole. And I sort of have jokingly suggested that maybe the Oak Park Department of Health should be chipping in on it. But I think there is tremendous value, right? Because it's a web of connections and a web of families that are going to be potentially seeing greater protection.
And I would agree. I mean, I just had a couple things to say, Sarah. So I guess I would agree with that it's a huge help to the community because it's good data, and we don't. I mean, as a community, as a state, we don't have good data because there are so many unreported cases. It's very difficult to understand what the real spread is. But anyway, so just a couple things. As you think about adjusting the metrics, I think one thing to be sure that you do take into account is what is the utilization rate. So you might ask the infectious disease people or whatever, when you do want to adjust the metrics, if that is a parameter which we should look at. If it's 80%, should the metrics be adjusted at some point? If it's 100%, you know, would those metrics be slightly different? And I think the answer technically would probably be yes. Whether it's practical or not, I don't know. And I'll leave that to the experts who would have a better feel for it.
I do want to bring us back real quick.
Yeah.
And ask the board if they have any questions of Brian. It's 11:30. I have to let him go if there are no questions for him with regards to the contract.
I don't know, this may be a Brian question. I apologize if it's not, but the other districts who are using this test, are they under the same types of optional screening of staff?
I think that's their call, isn't it, Brian?
As far from my awareness of this, I've probably represented 10 school districts on this matter. My understanding is with pretty much all employees, it's optional. Some school districts are making it optional for their students, some are not. But that's my own knowledge. I can't speak for every district that's adopted this.
And that's my knowledge of the superintendent's group that I'm with, that for the employees it's optional.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of Brian? Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for your patience, for coming into the meeting so late, and at least we got you home before tomorrow.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, are we ready to take this to a vote?
Can I just say, I don't want my point to be misconstrued. I understand what Matt's saying about, you know, this gives us information. I appreciate Craig's comment about this gives us data, but the only surefire way to keep people safe is to keep them distanced and at home. And I think that people don't realize that their kids are going to be in the building in a 6-foot bubble for the amount of time that they're there, because we still have to do 6 foot apart, right? That's still a thing. So people are thinking that their kids are going in to have some grand social, wonderful time, and they're not. It's not going to be like that. They're not going to be able to be hanging with their friends in that same way. They're going to be, the movement's going to be restricted. All of these things about what people are thinking school is not actually going to be school. And the folks that are most demanding of this change are the folks whose kids are not going to lose out academically anyway, because they already come from a space of privilege. The truth is, the people that are opting out, and I don't know if we've gotten these numbers yet, which are metrics that I would like to see, is do we know the percentage of Black and Brown students who are going to remain remote? And then how are we ensuring that those students that do remain remote are still getting the same academic advantages that the students that are in the building are getting? I mean, there's the logistical implications of how this rolls out does not look like what folks are insisting on. So I understand this need to have the information, but for me, the only true way to ensure that we're not exacerbating a pandemic is to keep people apart until we know that we can make sure that more people aren't going to get sick. And CPS just opened up and the preschool's already got all these cases. I mean, we'll be back in adaptive pause. I hope so much that I am absolutely wrong and that all of these wonderful measures, which the testing thing is a good thing. I get it. I hope that these measures actually accomplish what people want to accomplish, but the truth is the only thing that definitely will is keeping people apart.
You know, I agree with you on that. And we've tried to communicate more than I can count that teaching and learning is going to look different. That teachers will be at a social distance, students will be at a social distance, masks will be worn. But on the other side of that, and I heard you say about CPS, and I'm just speaking to my group of superintendents, that those that have been open, the transmission is not really happening in the schools. And I think that's one of the points you're getting to, is coming into the schools.
Okay, are we ready to call the question? So this is an action item for this evening, correct? Was there any other pressing questions for this evening? All right, I move to approve the contract for saliva testing with Safeguard. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Gail, could you please take a roll call?
Mr. Isley,
Yes.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
No.
Mr. Kovsky,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
No.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, our next item of business, we have B and C are sort of similar. I don't know if we could kind of maybe do those together.
Separate,
Okay.
please.
Sorry, didn't mean to confuse things.
No, fine.
Are we just voting, or is there anything the administration wants to say on these?
Cindy, is there anything you want to say?
No, we're just voting that the board approves that we can move forward with the refund.
Okay. So I move to approve the refund under the settlement of the now known Oak Park Oasis, formerly known as Paramount Nursing Home, and the Oak Park Oasis property tax appeal in the amount of $73,646. Is there a second?
Second.
We could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kovsky,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Isley,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is the prom contract.
You see,
No.
you have to do C too. The Berkeley Nursing and Rehabilitation.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's okay.
It's been a long night. All right. So I move to authorize the settlement of the Property Tax Appeal Board's appeal and reassessment of the Berkeley Nursing Home and Rehabilitation Center in the amount of $12,398. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Isley,
Yes.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Martieri,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes,
Thank
all
you.
right. Just wanted to talk about the prom, something fun. All right, so I don't know who's presenting this one.
This,
No.
you have to ask for the motion and stuff first,
Oh,
but this
sorry.
has already been brought to the board before.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so
no presentation.
thank you. I move to approve the prom contract with the Marriott Hotel for the 2021 prom at the cost of $52,000. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and is there any discussion on this item?
I hope we get to spend the money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right, right.
We actually bought this for a presentation, and then it inadvertently didn't get added to the action item at that next board meeting.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Roll call, please.
Mr. Martiri,
Yes.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Isley,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
Dr. Moore, Ms. Dixon Spivey,
Yes.
and Dr. Moore.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. So next we have the approval of the superintendent search firm contract. I move to approve the letter of agreement with Hazard Young, Atea and Associates for the superintendent search. Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion on this item? Just of note, we did have our attorney review it and made some modifications which were accepted. All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Mr. Isley,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Martiri,
Yes.
and Ms. Dixon Spivey.
Yes. All right, our last item of business, personnel recommendations, including retirements, resignation, transfers, and extension of leave of absence. I move to approve the personnel recommendations as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, if we could have a roll call, please.
Mr. Isley,
Yes.
Mr. Barron,
Yes.
Ms. Harris,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Martiri,
Yep.
Mr. Kofsky,
Yes.
and Ms. Spivey, Dixon
Yes.
Spivey. Thank you.
All right, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Yes.
I assume everyone's in favor. Thank you all so much tonight. It was a long night. We got a lot of work done, and I really appreciate all of your time.
Good night, everyone.
Good
you.
night.
Sleep well.